R360 is a league of the rarest of individuals who've accumulated extraordinary wealth, yet they have audacious dreams to change the world for the better. We teach them how to grow their wealth way beyond money. Have you ever heard the proverb, give someone a fish, you feed them for a day? Teach them to fish, you feed them for a lifetime. Well, we believe that the same fundamentals apply to money. R360 teaches individuals and families that to achieve your full potential, you need to discover all forms of capital: financial, intellectual, social, human, emotional, and spiritual, which spells fishes. And learning how to catch these fishes is what R360 families master. Welcome to Fortunate Fishes, Secrets of Success from R360. I'm Charlie Garcia.
Meet Joe McCabe, a man molded by resilience and driven by ambition, shaped by his Irish Catholic roots and a profound bond with his grandfathers. As the eldest of 5 boys in a blue-collar northern Philadelphia home, he learned the power of tenacity early on. A proud veteran and former U.S. Army captain, Joe's journey took an unexpected turn when denied entry into the Philadelphia police force. Fate intervened, leading him to the world of real estate. Through determination and a mentor's guidance, Joe's path transformed. Today, he's the visionary CEO of the Surefire Group, a beacon of success in multiple real estate ventures, title insurance, and mortgage companies. His portfolio boasts over 40 private equity investments, helping him grace the prestigious Inc. 5000 and Vet 100 lists. Only in his early 30s, Joe's story doesn't end there. A managing partner in home care agencies nationwide, a board member of Aerial Recovery, a published author and a philanthropist, his legacy extends far beyond business. From adversity to opportunity, Joe exemplifies an unconquerable spirit, crafting a legacy of triumph against all odds.
Joe, welcome. Having our youngest member here is great. I have so many questions for you. You've lived such a blessed life. Thank you for your service in the Army. And, as someone who grew up, in a row house, basically, in northeastern Pennsylvania with 5 brothers, father's a cop, your mom's a teacher. What was the trigger in all of that caused you to create great wealth?
So I don't know that there was one trigger, but it was a series of timelines that fell into place almost perfectly. I had, growing up, just always hanging out with my grandpops versus kids my age. I had kind of always been attracted to kind of the hardcore work mentality, the Korean War guys, hanging out in the VFW and just hearing these cool stories of life versus just hanging out in the street. And so I always chased something new, something hard, something different. And I always wanted to work multiple jobs, multiple things. And so while I was in college, I was kind of, training people at LA Fitness. I was working at Pep Boys and getting my real estate license while wrapping up school. And by then I was already in the military. So I was doing all that at once, and I fell into real estate. I had already had a start date for the Philadelphia Police Department, but in 6 months I had made like $75,000, which to me was not possible. And I told my dad that, and he's like, well, why would you, you can always be a cop till you're, I think, at 45 in Philly.
Right.
So you always have that as a backup plan, just keep selling real estate. And I started to fall in love with the game of it.
You wanted to do both, basically. Yeah. You wanted to be a cop.
Yep.
And sell real estate on your own time, but you had a disappointment in your life. Something. I mean, you'd always wanted to be a cop, like your dad and your grandpa, but something happened. What happened, and how did that bad thing actually lead you to a good thing?
Yeah, I had a start date that someone in the police department had basically pushed out about 6 months and arbitrarily said that I was immature. And he was someone that my dad had worked with previously, and they didn't really get along.
So you had a beef with your dad.
He had a beef with my dad, and by then it was, I had a top secret security clearance in the military. I was a military police investigator. It didn't make sense. I was more trained than any Philadelphia cop was, new cop going into it. So I thought I'd be an asset. And like a lot of things in life, when someone tells me no, I've learned that that is a great motivator for me. Sometimes I like getting let down on certain things because it drives me even harder. And that's kind of exactly what happened in this scenario. So it was never money. I wanted to be a cop and a realtor because I was like, 200 grand was a lot of money, and I knew people doing that. But then it was getting these little wins and having the ability to do something different every day. Kind of like being a cop. Every traffic stop's different, every deal's different. And I started to fall in love with kind of the game of just not even necessarily stacking the money, but getting deals done and just executing on different projects.
And what advice would you have for others? And what are kind of the key insights that you've learned along the way if somebody else wants to be successful in business or create wealth? What are the things that you've learned that you could share with them?
I think I wrote my book, Maintain Your Gear, for this reason. And it's because a lot of people, one of our core businesses is a real estate brokerage. And a lot of people get into real estate because they want to get rich quick and make a lot of money, and they have the wrong impression of it. So, in the book, I just talk a lot about how they all want to know something, right? They go to conferences, they listen to audiobooks, they want pen and, they want the pen, or they want to use fancy degrees and things. But none of that stuff has ever helped me. None of that stuff has mattered at all. And all that's ever worked for me was just, if you want to do something, jump in and do it. You don't need to know anything about it. You don't need to be a mortgage broker to start a mortgage company. I had no experience with that. You don't need to, have done title processing to build a national insurance company. You just need to start. And so for me, that's always been the biggest lesson is you don't need to know anything. You just need to have an idea and run with it, and you'll figure those things out along the way.
But one of your geniuses, though, is that you found or ran into mentors that took you as a young guy and really taught you a lot of things. Tell us about the importance of that.
Yeah, I had met someone who I had known for years, and he was just the normal old guy in the gym that says hi to you all the time and jokes about working in. And his name's Bob Mazur. And he, one day he spotted me on the bench press, which was kind of scary for me, but he was spotting me on the bench press. And I said, yeah, I just got my real estate license, by the way. If you're ever looking to get in, buy anything or sell anything, and let me know. And he's like, well, I own a real estate company. And we just hit it off, and he gave me my first really big deal. He was my first exposure to any amount of money at all, any amount of wealth. And so just to see the little things he did, like tipping people well and buying his employees lunch, and the things he said, the way he thought about life, the way he thought about his kids, his frugality, like I started to learn all those things by being with him as much as possible.
And I know you were, I think as a young man, you were in the Civil Air Patrol, but didn't go to the Air Force, but then learned later to fly. Was he the person that encouraged you also?
He was. He's been a pilot since World War II. So
wow.
he wasn't old enough for World War II, but he got his pilot's license back then. And so it's pretty easy to get ahead when you just copy other successful people.
Right.
And so to me, it was like, all right, I think flying is cool. So I'm going to do exactly what Bob did. I'm going to start a real estate company, and that's how we started. And then I'm going to get my pilot's license. And Bob used to tell me all the time that the biggest mistake he ever made was he hyper-focused in one niche, and that was his mistake. And sometimes you hear opposite advice from different people, and it worked for them. But he stayed in one zip code, and he would tell me about these deals he lost out on that lost him, tens of millions of dollars. And he said, always go bigger. Do not be afraid of, overly trusting people and scaling nationwide.
Right. Well, that leads us into intellectual capital. And how important is it maintaining a growth mindset? What does that mean to you? And, you mentioned your book, Maintaining Your Gear, and we're going to get into that. But I wanted you to really offer how important is it to have this growth mindset? And if you could write a letter back to yourself when you were 18, what would you say to yourself?
So the growth mindset piece is, I've always just done what I wanted to do. If there was something I wanted to learn about, I did it. If I wanted to get my pilot's license, I did it. I never really had, exposure to any of that stuff until I got into real estate. So for me, it was, if there was something I wanted to do or something I wanted to achieve, there was never anything holding me back from that. I never listened to other people, and I always tried to listen to people that I would actually trade places with, because I think, it happens a lot in a real estate transaction. I always tell the realtors, right, the worst thing that can happen is you're at a home inspection and the uncle shows up that does handiwork, right? The deal's done, it's over. You would never trade places with that guy. You probably wouldn't live in his house, so why are you taking home inspection advice from him? And so, when I go to, what I leverage R360 for more than anything is to sit there in a room and just sometimes really just be a fly on the wall and listen to what people say and the things that they've done, the things they've learned, the things they're interested in. And I use that to kind of guide me into my next decisions because they've been there, done that.
Sure.
And I would trade places with most of them.
Right. And if you were writing a letter back to yourself back, 13 years ago, or what would you say to yourself then, based on what you know today?
I think a lot of it for me would go back to what started with, I think, my generation more than anybody. I think that, a college degree meant so much less now than it did back then, right? But, it was well-meaning advice, but it was all I ever heard from my mom, that we had to go to school, we had to do this, we had to do that. The military was never an option. Cop was never really an option, although, we grew up seeing it. It was just, you had to go to school, and because of that, you were going to be successful.
Your mom and my mom were both teachers, so
yep.
I understand that part.
And that's exactly where it came from, and it was just hearing that constantly, and none of my brothers really gravitated towards education. None of us are, intellectuals. We all, right. I think, have really good intuition, and we're good at, getting the job done and working hard. But none of us were going to be philosophy majors,
Right.
And a lot of that was pushed on us. And so now I think with my generation and them, they've kind of been forced to become a little bit entitled, right? They were going to attend school, they were going to build up all this debt, but then because of that, they were going to be successful. And now they're stuck with crippling debt and a degree and,
Sure.
something silly most of the time, including myself.
Well, you wrote earlier this year, you wrote a book, Maintain Your Gear, which is a great book. I've read it. What does maintain your gear mean, and what value will someone get from reading it?
Yes, and that goes actually back to your last question a little bit. I wish someone would have just told me that it was okay to join the military and it was okay to do whatever the hell you wanted, whatever drove you there, right? I have a long life. I can screw up a million times. But no one said that. People actually, when I was growing up, was kind of looked down upon. No one celebrated the guys that enlisted in the military out of high school. It was like, well, these are the people that went to college. Here are the ones that went to Penn. And everyone else is just kind of like, they're just cruising through. And so.
And I think people discount, I was in the military and I went to a military academy. You learn leadership. You learn how to manage yourself and other people and discipline.
Yep.
That helps you across the board. And people shouldn't discount that. Or if you go into the military and you get expertise in cybersecurity, you can leave the military and go anywhere.
Yeah, and they're not afraid to throw, a 20-year-old guy into a leadership role. Like, hey, you're in charge of these 5 guys, go take that hill. And it's like, wow, no one ever trusted me that much. But Uncle Sam did. So it was really good training, and you get to do a lot of cool things and learn a lot of cool skills and learn how, when you don't do your job, it affects the rest of the team and the rest of the company or the rest of your class or your group. And that's how I wrote Maintain Your Gear. That's what the title was all about. The title is literally about how when you don't do fundamental things in your day, and I think of it as like a soldier in a uniform in their gear, right? If they don't have their individual first aid kit, well, now they can't apply a tourniquet to themselves or somebody else, right? They can't stop the bleeding, and therefore they can't carry on the mission. And so when you don't have these seemingly fundamental things, you don't have all your ammo, you don't have your rifle cleaned, you just affected the lives of everyone else in that mission, no matter what role, to use a company as an example, no matter what role in the company you're at. Your job is, critical to the mission and at a fundamental level.
But in your book, when you talk about it, it's almost just like you're almost like a maniac, making sure that the things that are going to keep you and your team alive, that you maintain them in such a way, at such a high degree. And to be successful, you have to have that same focus, particularly on the fundamentals of making money, business, and all the other things that go with it.
Yeah, it's very true. I mean, and I think that goes back to why people never get started, right? They're always worried about spreadsheeting it, is sometimes what I call it, right? I meet these people that have these spreadsheets and these ideas and all these things they're going to do that they never execute on. But like, they don't even brush their teeth, like their cell phone's not charged. They don't have a pen when they go to close a deal. Like, well, how can you close the deal without a pen? It's maintaining your gear goes down to that fundamental level. If you don't brush your teeth, people probably don't want to talk to you. And so maintain your gear really can apply to every aspect of life, but including fitness, right? I mean, if you're not physically fit in the military, and you slack off or in law enforcement, you can't catch the bad guy, or you can't run or you can't fight, and you have a heart attack on the job. And so, life is really kind of like R360. It's more than just one thing. It's more than just financial.
Sure.
It's so many other, like our fishes, it's so many other things.
Right. So on intellectual capital, aside from the book that you've written, what other book would you give to, or have given out the most, that has been really helpful in your own life trajectory so far?
The 10X Rule by Grant Cardone.
The 10X Rule by Grant Cardone. Tell us why that book is important. Is it industry specific to real estate? Or
No, it's just business.
And tell us a little about Grant Cardone. Who is he?
Yeah, so Grant Cardone is kind of the same as me, super middle class guy, no college degree, started off in the car business, and now owns like $12 billion worth of real estate, sales companies, the whole nine yards. And his book is truly about a lot of the things that have always resonated with me. It's that, it's not necessarily what you know or how skilled you are at it or even being a good salesperson, but that you can be successful with volume and just jumping in and trying. And like, you could be an expert salesperson, or even if you're not, if you make 1,000 phone calls, you're going to have a result that you want, and then you'll slowly hone in your skills as you go along. So, so the book itself is just all about, if you want to build something, you want to build it fast, and you want to have a business plan, just know that, hey, that's going to take probably 10 times longer than ever expected, cost 10 times more, and be 10 times as hard than you ever expected. So go into it knowing that, and go into it, really going all in, and 10X is kind of his methodology.
I haven't read it, so I'm looking forward to picking that up. Going to social capital, what do you feel is your social responsibility to use your God-given gifts to help others? And what are your ambitions, in your own community, in the state, in the country, in the world, in terms of using some of your entrepreneurial gifts for the benefit of humanity?
Yeah, so I'm still actively building our companies. We're not slowing down, and we have a long road ahead of us. I'm young. I want to build this thing as big as possible.
But even though you're young, you're one of the more philanthropic people that I know, to veterans, to all these different things. So you're not waiting till you're 60.
Right.
You're exercising that muscle now, so it must be important to you.
It is, and when I was in the military, I don't think, sometimes it sounds silly to people, but no one joins and doesn't have some inclination to want to deploy. Right. I never had that opportunity. I actively tried, and couldn't get it, and it just wasn't the right for the unit. So I'm on the board of Aerial Recovery, and another member in R360, Brittany, started that. So I help out at the board level on.
And aerial recovery, they go to war zones, they go to disaster areas. It's a lot of special operators,
Yep.
Navy SEALs, Green Berets, et cetera, PJs that go through training and then get deployed. And then there's a cost to that training, and you support veterans to go through the training.
Yeah, and that's the nice thing. It's like a full cycle thing. Like there's a lot of people that help veterans through different phases, like sometimes when it's too late.
Right.
These guys, we try to catch them in the beginning, put them through that somewhat of a coaching program, and then either transition them to the civilian world through long-term coaching or get them out there back on mission, right? That's the key with a lot of military guys. If we have this mission mindset and we've got to be on a mission or life sucks. And so if you can put them back into whether it's anti-human trafficking work or natural disaster work, they're back on mission, they're feeling good. So I try to put not only just money, but more resources and a lot of my time into the board and helping those guys out to achieve their goals.
So tell us about the importance of authentic personal relationships. You seem to be very good at doing that, and also joining different networks, not only R360, but others. Why is that important to you, and what advice do you give to others who may look at it and say, networking is self-serving, and you're just trying to get people to do something for you, that's not authentic. What do how's it helped you, and what do you recommend others do?
Yeah, and I could see how people do think that right away, and I think that's because they enter relationships with an agenda.
Right.
And I don't. Your
agenda is to help people.
My agenda is to help people. My agenda is to be there for somebody else. My agenda is to hear someone's story. And I don't have, luckily I don't have investors in our company. It's just me.
So
I have nothing to sell.
hearing means you're listening.
I'm listening. And I'm listening for those things where they say, I made this mistake. This is what I did about it. And I love one-on-one stuff. Like group things, big groups don't do a lot for me. I love to be in these.
Like
and this
going
is why
to
I
a
love
conference
R360.
with 1,000 people. It's like,
Yeah, I got to talk to 1,000 people for 5
Right.
minutes, and we're all going to get together with our families, and it's shallow. And I love to go to the R360 meetings where we've got 5, 10, 15 people, and then we have a really in-depth conversation, and then I set up a one-on-one meeting with them after that. And then I can go even deeper and really learn about them and their top lessons. A lot of the questions you're asking today are the same things I want to hear from them because I want a shortcut if I can.
Right. So transition to human capital, which is really maximizing your human potential, but it's also a lot about health, nutrition, exercise. And I know that's been an important part of your life, your brother's lives. Tell us about why that's important and how you leverage it for your success.
So growing up, it was more about we wanted to be physically intimidating in high school, right? And it was cool, and everyone wanted to lift as much weight as possible. But what I've learned is it's really somewhat of a lesson in life. It may be my only win that day, right? It could be a miserable business day or a miserable week, but I can make incremental improvements there. I can add on 2.5, 5, 10 pounds in the gym. And so lifting weights for me has always kind of been that release, but it's always been a reminder because sometimes you want to get into business and make a big wing, and sometimes you forget to think long term, but that's exactly what the gym is, right? You don't become a bodybuilder overnight or a power lifter overnight. It's just these incremental improvements over a long period of time to get a desired result. And that's what life is.
Yeah, Dave Sinclair at Harvard, the head of genetics, is one of our scientific advisors. We're connected to the top stem cell centers in terms of regenerating muscle, tendons. Tell us about your recent experience on the stem cell side, given some of the injuries you've had from powerlifting.
Yeah, so combination of, really jumping into powerlifting, and then my normal day-to-day in the military got me hurt multiple times. In both shoulders, I had torn labrums, and then my low back, I have 2 bulging discs. So I've gone to RMI twice.
And RMI is a center in Costa Rica, basically, where they do the work?
Yep. And they did orthopedic procedures where they injected all the joints, they injected my low back, and then they did a stem cell infusion. And knock on wood, no pain in my low back. And under imaging, all the tears, all the micro tears are gone in my shoulders. So really incredible results. And, luckily I called it early, right? I
Right.
wasn't in excruciating pain. I didn't have issues lifting yet,
Right.
but they were coming eventually. And so, that kind of let me reset the clock a little bit.
That's great. How do you consistently learn new skills, particularly when it's things that don't come naturally to you, to keep upping your game? What do you do? What advice do you have for others in terms of learning new skills?
Well, as far as new skills, I would say the one thing that I guess called the civilian side that I'm still working on is just advancing through the various airplane ratings and getting my instrument rating and commercial pilot rating. And that was something that, again, I never had a desire for. Someone else did it, and I fell in love with it. And so, in the business world, I kind of do the same thing. If there's something we need to get done, I want to understand every piece of our company, from the lowest level position in the company, all the way to the top. I want to know how to operate in each and every single one of those, because I'm not a fancy speech writer, email writer type guy, but I'll lead from the front. I'll jump in and help that employee. And by doing that, I have to understand each and every single system, even if it's not in my job description.
Right. Well, you were very helpful. You introduced me on the artificial intelligence side to this guy, Chris Carr, who I spoke to a couple days ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I had him speak to my team, and now he's advising me and helping me go really deep and learning how artificial intelligence is really going to change everything, make us more productive. But you were the one that found him.
Yeah.
And I guess he's doing some work for your company?
So I wanted to find him because one thing that drives me crazy is noise. And AI right now in my industries are just, it's a lot of noise.
Right.
And so when I met with him, I just wanted to know, hey, Chris, is this actually a thing in title yet, or mortgage or real estate? And he's like, basically, no. And I'll let you know when the platform comes out, because it's all my leadership team would talk about AI. We all use ChatGPT and things to write our emails now and stuff like that. But I wanted to say, hey, Chris, when should I get involved in this? When does it actually matter to us? Should we be worried about building a platform?
So what I'm hearing is you seek out experts.
Yeah.
And you pay them for their expert opinion, and you follow their advice, but you find whoever it is, again, it's almost like having a mentor that's going to help you and your team grow and teach you things, because it's important that you know them.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are caught up in the details of that right now, and everyone's starting an AI company, right? But it's like, just wait. Like, there's going to be a platform that comes out. Someone's probably already working on it, and it's going to be cheaper, and then leverage it for your business at that point.
Excellent. So emotional capital, one of the things is dealing with painful disappointments, failures, resilience. How have you managed to bounce back from some of your biggest failures or kind of emotional wounds that we all get through life?
Really by continuing to make progress and staying in your routine. I think, if you do those things, and, they're going to come. There's going to be setbacks. There's going to be failures. There's going to be people that don't back you or support you. People leave your company. Your wife gets mad at you, whatever the hell it is. At the end of the day, if you have a routine and you're disciplined and you're steadily making progress, you're going to overcome those things pretty quickly. And I think what a lot of people do is they get hit, and then they stop and they freeze and they panic and they get depressed and they do all these things instead of just getting back in the fight.
Right. And you, in your book, I love it because you say, look, just go out and do it and assume you're going to get punched straight in the face. And it's not that you're getting punched in the face. How are you going to react to it? And just assume that you're going to get punched every single day, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to go out and do it.
Yeah, it's true.
It's true. And tell us a little bit more about that, because it's a self-talk. That's the talk that you're putting into your soul, basically, that then affects your outcome.
I learned that lesson from Bob Mazur and his zip code lesson that he, to this day, is upset about. But he would just tell me, like, hey, if I stayed in this zip code because I wanted control. I wanted to walk to those houses. I wanted to know who the tenants were. He was like, buy property in other states, start companies in other states, trust your leadership, trust the people you hire. Someone's going to screw you. Get over it. Just know it's going to happen. Have things in place to try to catch it. cut them off when it happens and move on. Like, just accept that
Right.
that is a fact of life, and it can't get you down because you know it's going to happen, but you trust them anyway, and because of that, you're able to scale your company because you're not constantly looking over your shoulder. You're not always afraid of what's going to go wrong. You're thinking of what could go right and try to
Right.
stay in that kind of positive mindset.
And how do you cultivate a positive mental attitude? Do you have certain routines when you go to bed at night, when you wake up in the morning, things that you do so that you're always positive? What do you do?
Certain things being consistent for me are important. So, I like to get up every morning. I like to go to Starbucks immediately.
What time do you 7:30, I think I read.
7:30. Yep.
Yeah.
And then I literally get a shower, go right to Starbucks. I don't eat until about 2 or 3 o'clock, which I learned later from Dr. Sinclair, but I was doing it just because I would
Right.
get tired. And then I like to work for the first 2 hours in my car, just making phone calls, catching up with the leadership team. Then I go home, I go to my office, and I continue to work until about 7. That's when I typically eat for the second time. I go to the gym, and the gym I kind of use as a reward. But for me, having those whatever the hell happens in between that is business. That's, that's kind of the fun shake-up part. But I need to have that, I like to have that structure in my life, and that keeps me focused. It's like, okay, I start the day off consistent, I end it consistent with a reward. I consider the gym somewhat of a reward, because if I miss it, I let the schedule get ahead of me. And I think of us flying, one of the best rules they teach is, don't let the plane get ahead of you. And your calendar's the same way. And the other thing that I do, you reminded me of this before the interview, I execute on everything I write down that day. I mean,
Tell
I
us
don't
about that,
procrastinate.
because a lot of people get frustrated. They get 500 emails a day. They have maybe they do or maybe they don't have a checklist of things that they want to do today, but the end of the day comes and they've done 2 things on their checklist. How do you do it differently, and why are you successful?
The amount of time that I see people trying to triage their emails is crazy to me.
So what do you do?
I just address them as they come in. I have my phone calls, I have my set calendar, and in between that I'm catching up on all phone calls, all emails, all text messages, and I do that before the end of the day. And I'm forced to do that with a little bit of speed.
And do you come into each day with things to do or task list?
Yeah. And then
And
it
you make
usually
that,
gets,
the day before?
Yeah, so I usually have on the left side is my calendar scheduled out as, whatever meetings I have by the hour. And then on the right-hand side is kind of all the checklist, minutia stuff. And I either delegate that stuff to someone else and make sure it gets done same day.
Got it.
A lot of times what happens, though, is I go to the gym the night before, and then I text myself a whole list of 10 other things that I then go and write down and put on the calendar. But I think the key is, all those things need to get done, and they do matter. And I think, if you're willing to delegate them, you can just, my goal is to always maximize my time.
It seems
through
like it's
other
part of your
people.
maintain your gear is your calendar and your things to do, or your gear.
Yeah,
in a
I
sense.
can't procrastinate. It's just not
Right.
it's not in anyone's best interest.
Right. So now going to spiritual, I've had a chance to meet your wife, Alexa. She grew up, very poor in Philadelphia, Catholic, Puerto Rican. You went to a Catholic grade school, high school. Your parents were Irish Catholic. How important has spirituality been in your own life?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, grew up Catholic, went to Catholic school from kindergarten all the way through actually college. My college was a Catholic college. And I think that, growing up in those, really what that taught was tradition, how important family tradition was and things like that. But for me, from the spiritual side of things, what says it best is a quote you said to me once, doing the right things and letting the cards fall where they will. And I mean, really it's about ethics, right? And doing what you feel is right at all times. And so that's how I've always operated, and that's how I look at spirituality. It's, I'm Catholic, I was born into it, and that's an important tradition. But for me, it's really about, as long as I do the ethical things and I can live with myself, then I'm happy.
Yeah, and we define spirituality very broadly. We have
Yeah.
people from all faiths, but some people just feel it's more of a sense of, why am I here? And how am I using my God-given gifts for the benefit of others? How important is it understanding kind of your life purpose and why you are here?
Yeah, that's an activity that you and I are working on now, and one of the benefits here. I haven't narrowed down the life purpose to one word for me,
Right.
but my
Or a
gut tells
sentence.
me,
Yeah.
or even my gut tells me that, I want to impact the world at a greater scale, but I just want to be, I want to be able to build a great family unit, and I don't ever want, growing up, my mom's family and my dad's family, they're all so angry and spread out and they're not together anymore. And I never want that to happen in our family. So I kind of want to be the glue that holds the family together. So I'm always striving to do that and just make sure that everyone's at Thanksgiving together, everyone's at Christmas together, everyone's at Halloween together, as much as possible. It's tough when your brother's a cop or your dad's a
Right.
cop, but we try to do that because I've seen that tear families apart, and the only time they get together is in a tragedy, and now they're fighting over who gets grandmom's china. And I just
Right.
think that is such a horrible existence.
Well, I think you're going to be the most amazing father and grandfather, and I wanted to end with a final question, which is really, you named your son Charlie James. I thought you named him after me, but I know that's not the case. And your book also, there was a dedication to your two grandfathers. One served in the Marines, one in the Army. Tell us about that to kind of end this. And it seems like your life is almost like a dedication to their lives and what they put into you.
Yeah, those guys really taught me everything. And one of them was literally my best friend. I mean,
And he was in the late 70s when
yeah,
this,
and he died at 83. And I mean, when I say best friend, a lot of people say their grandpa was their best friend. I was with him morning till night. He lived with us for years. He would pick me up. He'd break me out of school. We would we were thick as thieves, and so that was Charles, and then my dad's dad was James, and he was the Marine. And he, to this day, the best vacation I ever went on, he had moved to Arkansas, and everyone was kind of mad at him for it because he had left his whole family, went down there, got remarried, but he had this 10-acre farm, and I was in the Wild Wild West. I was 7 years old carrying around a pistol and, hanging out in Arkansas. And to this day, it's the best trip I ever went on, the best memory. But just the lessons that they would give, and, he would put me to work on the farm. And I remember, I was 7, but I just remember him being tough on me. And I'd say, well, I couldn't do this because of this. And he was like, no one cares about your excuses. Get back up there and get it done. And that stuck with me till this day.
Well, share with us the final memory. You went to see him again. You took your brother, and unfortunately, he actually died. But tell me what you told him on his deathbed, which I love.
I said, so none of us expected to find him the way we did. And
he was a Marine, right?
He was a
At
Marine.
Korea. Yeah.
Yep. And so I basically got down to him, and we didn't expect, we had to break this to the whole family. He was gone. He was on his deathbed. He was just breathing heavy. There was no sign of life except for the breath. And I just leaned down to him, and I said, because we were getting ready to leave, and I said, Pop, maybe if you had joined the Army, you wouldn't be lying on your back, but I guess that's because you're a Marine. And I swear to God, with my brother sitting there, he grabbed me by the collar and sat himself up and said, motherfucker, and fell back down. And that was it. That's the last memory I have of him.
Well, he was a proud Marine.
He was.
That's for sure.
Yep.
Well, thank you for being a member of R360, coming today. And I'm so proud of what you've accomplished. And I really look forward to what you're going to do over the next 30, 40, 50 years to make an impact in the world. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you, Charlie.